That's why I rock with him.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice.
That's why I rock with JV, man.
JV.
Beautiful people, how we doing? Welcome to episode 1 of the JV show on YouTube. I appreciate you guys all for coming over here, checking us out tonight. We got a fantastic episode ahead of us. We got free agency, trade rumors. Are the Pats back? Chicago Bears, how can Josh Allen, Lamar, and Joe Burrow overcome the hump? And a Brock Purdy gauntlet to end off the episode. I appreciate you guys joining in tonight. Let me welcome on a man who has football knowledge far beyond mine, a guy that I've talked to for a while, and I'm happy to have on the show as our new co-host and guest, Mr. Shawn. Shawn, thanks so much for being with us, brother. How are you doing?
Appreciate you for having me, man. Let's get it.
Listen, Shawn is outside of the Patriots. You're going to get no bias from him. As a Bills-Patriots guy, we'll see what happens in the future, but I appreciate him joining us. And tonight, it's been a wild free agency to start the season. Yeah, we're just kind of trying to kick things off right now. So just looking at it immediately, we're going to hop in right away to the trade rumors, the trade requests, and everything else that's been happening. Starting at number 1, DK Metcalf traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They just signed him to a 5-year, $150 million contract. Shawn, let's hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure why you do that. I mean, to an extent, I do understand it. You're the Steelers, and you're kind of stuck in that place of mediocrity. But I don't understand. I don't think paying a receiver $30 million a year is the way that you go about it, especially when you don't have a quarterback. And if you do have a quarterback, it's either going to be Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. And I don't think that's a recipe for success. But I think this is very on brand for the Steelers. I think this is a move that makes them slightly above average, and that's kind of what they've been.
Yeah, so DK Metcalf, I mean, when you look at his career as a whole, I mean, he's hit 1,000 yards 3 times. So it's not that they're buying into somebody that they can't trust, and they know the production they're going to get out of Metcalf, right? He's been a reliable guy for the Seahawks. He's worked beside Lockett for his entire career. So, yeah, he's been 1A, but he's always had somebody reliable beside him. George Pickens now is going to be that guy. The thing with DK to the Steelers that concerns me, it's what does Pittsburgh want out of their team? And adding DK is great. Paying him $30 million is fantastic. You have George Pickens. You have 2 guys now in the offense that command the ball, right? They're usually unsettled when they're not getting fed the ball, which is obviously fair. You want to get the ball as a player. But my thing is, if you have quarterback troubles, it doesn't matter if you bring in prime Jerry Rice, if you bring in Julio, if you bring in Calvin Johnson, there will always be problems. And you will never advance, especially if you have an aging Russell Wilson who was serviceable last year, but we saw what happened once the playoffs arrived, and Justin Fields, who still needs some time to develop. So unless they have a plan moving forward to assess and clear up the quarterback situation, I just don't see it happening. And Shawn, I know you and me have talked off air a lot about Mike Tomlin and his struggles. It's well, if you're going to let up 30, 35 points a game when the playoffs come, what does it matter who you have on offense, right? Pittsburgh can't get their stuff nailed down. They haven't had a prime offense since Big Ben, AB, and Le'Veon Bell, which was 8-10 years ago now.
Yeah, I just, and it's when you think about it, they have their QB worries, but then they also just have their offensive play calling issues. And so now you're going to bring in DK Metcalf, who's a relatively one-dimensional receiver, and you're going to have him in a limited offense. I just don't see how that's going to bring a lot of success. Because I would say, with the exception of running a go route, a post, a corner, he's not really a guy that's going to win on a dig route, on a hatchet route, on so I just don't think that that's really something that is really going to help the Steelers the way that they think it is. I think this is a move that the Steelers are making, because it's just what do we do? We have to do something, and this is kind of like the thing that they're going to do. I just don't think it's going to help them, though.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand they needed weapons, but when you look at the situation as a whole last year, I don't think DK, if you plug him into the offense, changes much.
No.
Like, against the Ravens in the playoffs, it was just a complete disaster. It wasn't necessarily a lack of weapons. It wasn't a lack of talent at receiver. Sure, that might have helped, but they were going to get demolished one way or another. Najee Harris is, like, okay, but you can do a lot better, I feel like.
Yeah.
And the defense, which, I mean, yeah, I understand Mike Tomlin. Like, he's going to walk his way into Canton and go to the Hall of Fame. But when you are allowing so many points in the playoffs, if you can't get past Baltimore, then what's it going to be against Buffalo? And if that happens, if you win against Buffalo, then it's the Chiefs, and then it's the Super Bowl. It's like you have a long way to go, right? And I don't know. DK at $30 million seems like a lot to me. But hey, listen, the offense is gonna be good, and they're going to be good again. But like, what does good mean for the Steelers at this point, right? It's been like 20 years of good.
Well, and so like the last thing that like I'll say when it comes to this situation is that I think if the Steelers want to actually improve, they're going to need a year or two where they're not good, because they've always been like around like in like the first round, like they're around like 18 to like 19 for like a pick. So like they're never really getting like a good QB. So it's either like you get a reach in like the first round at quarterback, or you're getting an old veteran in free agency. So like this move is probably going to win them an extra game or two, which in like the long run is not going to help them, because they're still going to have the same issues which they have, which is their quarterback play.
No, I completely agree. Deshaun, receivers have been on the move all offseason long already. Another notable one, Davante Adams signed by the Los Angeles Rams. 2 years, $46 million contract, $23 million per year. Now, we kind of talked about this. We shot at each other some text. Here's my thing. It's like Davante Adams, for me, Deshaun, is still a top 10 guy in the league. I still see him as a pure elite class guy in the league. When you look at his seasons, he was on pace this year to play a full season at 1,300 yards, and I think he was on pace for 10 touchdowns. 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns on pace for a full season. That puts him top 5 in pretty much every single category, right? Top 10 in touchdowns, top 3 in receiving yards, pardon me. So, yeah, I understand he might be getting a little old. I think he's turning 33, but the Rams are upgrading at Cooper Kupp, who has been unstable health-wise, and they're getting a guy they can pair with Puka now and Matthew Stafford, who they're bringing back for year 5. That's pretty solid. Now, I don't know how far this propels the Rams into playoff Super Bowl contention. They were really good this year. They still need to fix that defense, but I don't know what your perspective is. I think Davante Adams is still more than a serviceable guy. I mean, I think Davante Adams is still in the elite category. Screw what anybody else has to say about age.
I think it's for sure an improvement over Cooper Kupp, whether or not he's healthy or not. But especially with the fact that Cooper Kupp has been injured. I guess for like the last 2-3 years, like he's been going through like his injuries and whatnot. I think it is for sure an improvement. But exactly like you said, I just don't know how much of an improvement it is, because last year they didn't have any issues offensively, right? It was their inability to stop the run. So I think it's a good move, but I think it's almost a lateral move. Like, yes, Davante Adams is great, but he's also turning 33, and that's kind of that magic number for where receivers kind of start to fall off a little bit, and now like you're stuck paying him $23 million a year. I just like, again, I think it's one of those moves where it's like, I have to make a move. He's available. But yeah, like I don't think it's a move that's really going to make them a Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, well, the Rams bring back Stafford, and right away, immediately, that's screaming like we're trying to win right now. Like there's no waiting for development for Stafford,
No.
right? His career's almost over. I mean, he's probably contemplating retirement over the next few years. So for them to go out and get a staple piece like Adams that they can probably rely on a little more than Cooper Kupp health-wise makes some sense. But like you said, like they need to use this draft and free agency to hopefully beef up the defense a little more than it was last year. Now, the unit overall was okay, but against the better teams, they kind of got demolished. They kind of got shredded apart.
Yeah.
I know they had the defensive rookie of the year. It's not a terrible unit, but it's young, it's inexperienced, and once they upgrade that, I think we're talking about serious contending territory. I mean, they were 6 points away from an NFC Conference Championship game this year. That's not too bad, especially for a defense with a lot of room to improve. So maybe they get another guy in coverage this year. Maybe they get another run stopper. Then we're talking about someone serious that can affect this dynasty that potentially the Eagles are looking to build, right? After that huge dominant performance all the way through the NFC. Another guy from the Rams that we've talked about and, ironically is also on the trade block, Cooper Kupp, probably going to be gone from the Los Angeles Rams. Trade landing spots, Deshaun. I mean, I picked out a few that I liked. I had Pittsburgh on there initially, but now that they went after DK, I just don't see that happening unless they go all in on receivers. The one spot that I really liked was Denver. They established Cortland Sutton on the outside. He's their big target. He had 1,000 yards this season. He was great this year, but they do need someone for Bo Nix to rely on over the middle, someone in the slot that he can work with. I think Cooper Kupp as a veteran, the Broncos are good enough to get by, but Cooper Kupp would certainly boost that offense and help Bo Nix with his development. Otherwise, I'm looking probably at the Cowboys, the Ravens. I think I had the Bucks if they got rid of Chris Godwin, but that really depends on that situation. So I thought Denver was a good fit for him. Cooper Kupp, I'm interested to hear what you think because he had that breakout year in 2021, and he hasn't been bad ever since, but injuries have kind of derailed his career. He's been on pace for 1,000 yards for most of his seasons, but besides his Triple Crown season, Cooper Kupp's kind of been average. And you can credit that to injuries. You can credit that to, returning half injured, whatever it is. But statistically, he hasn't been fantastic up to his standards, right? He almost had 2,000 yards in that Super Bowl season, hasn't played a healthy season since.
Yeah, I think it's all but certain that he's gone now that they just signed Davante Adams. Yeah, so now it's really where he goes. I think a dark horse where he could go would be the Jaguars. They just lost Christian Kirk. They don't really have any receiving options. They also released Evan Ingram. So that's like a landing spot. They have a good quarterback. I'm not going to say a great quarterback, but the spot that I would like to see him, I think he bleeds it. I think he's everything that we are about. I would love to see Cooper Kupp in New England. I think he is the perfect slot guy. He's reliable, a safety blanket for Drake May, who's about to take a huge leap in year 2. So I think with DK now going to the Steelers, Davante now going to the Rams, T. Higgins, he gets franchise tagged. The Patriots are going to get one of these receivers. And right now, it looks like it's going to be either Cooper Kupp or Chris Godwin. And of the two, I'm going to go with Cooper Kupp simply because I feel like he has a lot more, I think he has a lot more this upcoming season to prove. I think Cooper Kupp is going to play with a chip on his shoulder this year.
Yeah, we're going to get into the Patriots too, Deshaun. We kind of had that listed out because I know you're a Pats fan and we have a lot to talk about their development as a team moving forward. And at the end of the day, I mean, the way I assess Cooper Kupp is that every time I watch Cooper Kupp, I see the flashes of greatness from that 2021 season. It's evident that he can still play football. But Puka came in, and while Cooper Kupp had some injury problems, and granted, Puka had his own as well, but Puka was healthy long enough and built a connection with Stafford that he almost took over that offense. And he's an incredible player, right? I think he's a 2-time Pro Bowler. He's been excelling in that offense. But ever since he arrived, Cooper Kupp's kind of been, I don't know, phased out of the offense. There were points this season he went on stretches for games where he was getting no targets, right? So if you put him in the right spot, that they need some weapons, but I don't think the Patriots necessarily like are banking on Cooper Kupp here. Like there's a lot of weapons out there that they can still go grab. I think that's not a bad landing spot as well, and we'll get into that obviously a little later in the episode. Another receiver I want to throw your way to Shawn, T. Higgins, franchise tagged for the second year in a row by the Cincinnati Bengals. So as a fan of football, what are your thoughts on the franchise tag? Because in my eyes, and I voiced my opinion on this, it's tough for me to watch NFL players get franchise tagged more than once and have no job stability. Now, let me preface, yes, they're making $26 million a year, so it's tough to actually feel truly bad for somebody that's making that much money. But at the same time, you realize there's no job stability for T. Higgins right now. This is the second year in a row where he doesn't know where he's going to land. Now, he'll probably get traded or probably get re-signed by the Bengals, one of the two, but it's pretty embarrassing that Cincinnati still hasn't sorted out their business. They could have had Chase a long time ago for way cheaper. They could have had T. Higgins a long time ago for way cheaper. Jesse Bates, there's a whole list. The list goes on, and now they're having a garbage sale.
Yeah, I think it's a travesty. I think to do a franchise tag once, I think it's going to be hard on that player. I think to do it 2 years in a row with the same player, I think that's ridiculous. And I think we just saw, because I feel like there's always this thing is oh, they are getting paid millions of dollars. Why should we feel sorry for them? Absolutely, I get that. But then look at a player like Brandon Ayuk. If Ayuk doesn't hold out, say he gets franchise tagged last year, okay? If he doesn't hold out, he tears his ACL, he's not getting another big deal, right? So that's why these guys are fighting for the long-term deals, because football is a gruesome sport. One play, and your whole career is it could potentially be over. So yeah, I think franchise tagging T. Higgins 2 years in a row is a reflection of just how bad Cincinnati is ran. You don't get a deal done with Jamar Chase, and then it goes into the off season. Now you're losing Trey Hendrickson. There's just so many things that are going wrong in Cincinnati, and now you are going to be bringing back a receiver that I'm going to assume does not want to play there anymore. So I think it's interesting, but I am definitely not a fan of doing a franchise tag, especially not 2 years in a row.
Yeah, no, I hate it. Flat out, I hate it. And the worst part is that's Joe Burrow's second best friend. And that is Jamar Chase is Joe Burrow's man, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, from Cincinnati's perspective, it's what are your goals? You have the franchise guy locked down. You made a Super Bowl a few years ago, and you've done nothing since to return, to actually make some noise and actually go to a Super Bowl. I know that they went, I think they had a playoff stretch afterwards, but at the end of the day, it's you have your franchise guy. You have a guy that legitimately in the proper offense with proper coaching could actually be the best guy in the league. You pair him with Andy Reid, no doubt in my mind, Joe Burrow becomes the best guy in the league. You know what I mean?
No.
Would you disagree?
Yeah, I don't think Joe Burrow is that good. I think Joe Burrow is a product of his environment, and I think since he's been in the league, he's just been blessed with receivers. His rookie year had Jamar Chase. His rookie year, yeah, right.
I think he had Jamar his rookie year. Yeah.
Yeah, he had Jamar, Tyler Boyd, and T. Higgins, and Joe Mixon. Right? It's just I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's in that a top five, but I think when you start talking the elite to the elite, I don't think he's there. And there's this idea about Joe Burrow that I don't think is necessarily there in real life. Like, yes, he had an amazing season, but they lost, right? Like, they lost a lot of those games. So, like, for me, it's like, yes, you were going and putting up these godly stats, but, like, they weren't really translating to wins. So, at the end of the day, are we here to go and put up stats, or are we here to go and win?
No, I see what you mean. I think my thing with Burrow and that whole Cincinnati argument is I've seen what Joe Burrow can do, and there's a big difference between when you're playing on a team that is built to win and you're just supplementing that team with proper quarterback play, which is like what Jalen Hurts did, versus on a team that requires you to play hero ball like Josh Allen, like Lamar in most cases, and like Joe Burrow, I feel like. And for me, I've watched Cincinnati let down Joe Burrow so often year after year, and I just wonder, like, what would it be like if he got drafted by Kansas City? Like, what would it be like? Would we have the same output that we've seen with Mahomes? Like, I feel like we would. If you gave Burrow Tyreek Hill in that year one, he would have won with Tyreek Hill, absolutely. And then afterwards, I mean, right now, I don't know. Maybe I'm delusional, but I still feel like Joe Burrow, if you gave him Reed or if you put him in Philly, like, it's no question that he becomes arguably the best guy in the league. Wouldn't you say so?
Okay, so if you go and place him on Kansas City with Tyreek Hill, right? In that year, who was the wide receiver 2?
Was it... Nah, Juju was after. Was it McCole Hardman?
This is what I'm saying, right? So you're saying, oh, if he had Reed and Tyreek, as if he is playing with nobody. He's had Jamar Chase, Joe Mixon, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. Like, he's not short of talent at all. So it's like, at what point are we going to stop making excuses for players, right? And especially players of this magnitude, right? Week 1 of this year, right? He lost a game to New England that should not have happened. He had a costly fumble in that game. Like, that should not have happened. And if you look at the season in a whole, if they win that game, they're in the playoffs, right? So I feel like we are making excuses again and again for certain players. Joe Burrow and Josh Allen. I don't get it. I don't understand it, and I'm calling it out every time I see it.
So just to kind of close the loop, maybe, Deshaun, and just to hear your thoughts here, because I know from, previous discussion that you are a Lamar fan and almost like a Lamar like super fan. Like, you stand beside Lamar regardless of what's happening. So what would you say if I told you, well, people make the same excuses about Lamar? Wouldn't you say so? Like, he has 2 MVPs. He's had the All-Pros. He had 9 All-Pros this year, or 8 Pro Bowlers or something like that, 6 All-Pros, and he still can't get it done. So why do the goalposts shift for Lamar when you talk about him, but Josh Allen and Joe Burrow, they just can't get it done?
Okay, so who has been the Ravens' best receiver?
Mark Andrews, for sure. Mark
Andrews. A tight end. Okay. Joe Burrow has had T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs. Right? Like, if you give Lamar Jackson, like, one of those guys, right? Just one of those guys. And this is why I'm, like, specifically more upset when I see excuses being made for Joe Burrow, because if you give Lamar Jackson Joe Burrow's number 2, that would be the best receiver Lamar Jackson has ever played with.
But if you put Lamar in Cincinnati this year,
yes,
you think they actually get a seriously catastrophically different outcome than they got with Joe Burrow?
I do.
Under what grounds?
I think his ability to make plays on the ground separates himself from Joe Burrow. Because, like, let's not just act like Joe Burrow is going out and making plays with his legs. With a unstable offensive line like you have in Cincinnati, you're going to need to be able to run around, make plays. Lamar does that, right? And Lamar is used to not having receivers. He's used to having to go and rely on wide receiver 2 and 3s as his one. Rashad Bateman, like, are we being serious? Rashad Bateman? Why are we throwing the ball to Rashad Bateman at any crucial point of any game? So you're telling me you give Lamar Jackson a 2-time MVP, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase? Jamar Chase? You give Lamar Jackson Jamar Chase? Yes, the outcome is different. Absolutely. Because Joe Burrow and Cincinnati fans are living off of a Super Bowl that he went to. The key
Lamar hasn't been, though.
The key word is that he's went to the Super Bowl, and he didn't even win, right? Yes, Lamar Jackson has not went to the Super Bowl, absolutely. Lamar Jackson has also had not had like the rosters that Joe Burrow has had. That's just a fact.
I would disagree, though.
That's a fact.
As a full roster, I would say Joe Burrow's had much less
Why?
than Lamar.
Why?
Maybe in a receiving core, Joe Burrow's had much more for sure.
And
I would never deny that.
And running back. And in 2021, when they went to the Super Bowl, that defense was really good. That defense was. No, but see, but why do you say otherwise? That defense was really good.
No, for sure. But I'm saying otherwise, besides that Super Bowl year, Joe Burrow has really not had a defense, and the offensive line has been brutal. And Lamar hasn't really had those struggles.
You're right. Lamar Jackson has all the time in the pocket to throw to nobody. Awesome. That is great. That is great.
So they essentially need what each other have.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow needs a real team, and Lamar needs weapons.
And it's not even that Lamar just needs weapons. It's weapons and a competent play caller. When they played like the Chiefs last year, #1 rushing team in the league, why is Lamar Jackson throwing the ball 50 times? Lamar Jackson is terrific in the passing game. He's improved year after year. But throwing the ball 50 times when you are the best running team in the National Football League, like, this is what I'm saying. Like, it's not even just the receivers. Lamar Jackson is consistently let down by his receivers. Shout out Mark Andrews. And his play calling. Like, at what point are we going to say that, like, Lamar Jackson is just time? And yes, there is times where he does have his shortcomings, but it's not to the same level as his counterparts who have so much more around them.
Fair. Okay. I think I would respectfully disagree, but at the end of the day, I think all three of them, to be honest with you, Allen, Burrow, and Lamar have all been somewhat let down by what's been around them at some point, and the narrative that they can't win in the playoffs, and we'll get into that in a few segments, but the narrative that they can't win in the playoffs individually, for me at least, is busted, right? Like that, I hate when people bring that up as an argument, and we'll touch on that right away. Before we do, I just want to pivot back to free agency real quick. Geno Smith traded to the Las Vegas Raiders. Seattle, like I said, they're going nuts. They're just getting rid of everything. They're revamping, which I understand. Seattle, I don't think was doing anything with Geno. I see Geno more as like a bridge quarterback. I think he's good, but I don't necessarily think it's going to result in a Super Bowl for anyone. So Geno to Las Vegas makes some sense. I thought it was going to be Sam Darnold, but he's pretty much just an older version right now than Sam Darnold. He's reuniting with Pete Carroll, which is nice, and hopefully he can give Vegas some hope because they haven't won since 2002 in the playoffs, which is crazy. So I think success for different franchises means different things, right? For Buffalo right now, a Super Bowl is it. Winning and getting to the AFC Championship, even getting to the Super Bowl means nothing. So for Vegas, it's like, can we even make the playoffs? We haven't had stable quarterback play since Derek Carr, and I don't even know if I would describe that as stable quarterback play because it was pretty busted for half the time he was there. So Geno Smith, at least hopefully if they build a little bit around him, would be nice to just get them off the ground and get them rolling, and eventually maybe they can get things going with a real roster and win some games.
Yeah, it's one of those. I think it's a move that they made again simply because like they had to, like they like had to do something at quarterback. I think some of the worst football I watched this year was when I watched like the Raiders play. Like I think he's a great guy. I think he's great for clicks and whatnot. He's hilarious, but I do not want to see Gardner Minshew at quarterback again. Like I'm done with that. I definitely think he's a bridge quarterback. I wouldn't be surprised if, even though they signed Geno Smith, they still go and draft a quarterback. And they use Geno Smith to kind of mentor him and get him ready, whoever it is. I'm assuming because of Tom Brady's relationship with him, it's going to be Shedeur Sanders. If they can get him ready, learning under a vet like Geno Smith, I think that's kind of the direction that Vegas is going in, because by no means is signing Geno Smith something that's going to make them a Super Bowl a contender at all, especially in like the same division as the Chiefs.
Yeah, no, I think we see eye to eye there, Shawn. And speaking about mentorship, I mean, now we're going to move over into a few segments we had planned out, structured here. Mentorship as a rookie quarterback. The Chicago Bears are looking decent, I would say. I think they look a little bit better than when they started out last season. They kind of threw Caleb Williams into this role where he had weapons, right?
He had to play
Superman. DJ Moore. Yeah, he had DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome. They had DeAndre Swift there. Everything was great, but the O-line was terrible. The defense was actually not too bad when you break things down, but they definitely could be better. Like, there's holes all over the roster, and then the massive, massive red flag was the coaching, right? So they brought in Ben Johnson. Since he brought in Joe Thuney, 4-time All-Pro, to help them out at guard there. They also brought in Jonah Jackson from the Rams, who has those ties with Ben Johnson from back in his Detroit days. So it's good to see that the Chicago Bears are stepping in the right direction, and I think under Ben Johnson's leadership. We've heard such great things about Dan Campbell. Now, is that because of the publicity he gets? Maybe he's just an incredible players coach. I'd like to think that he's a pretty solid coach of what he's done flipping that Detroit franchise around. I think Ben Johnson might be able to take a little bit of that mentorship, apply it to Chicago, and they haven't really been good since 85, right? Like, they've had a really long stretch of poor football play, and the Friends, I mean, I would imagine that they're pretty depressed, flat out. So
Absolutely.
Caleb Williams, he's kind of getting what he needed last year. He's getting the offensive line help. They still have cap space to maneuver around in the draft and in free agency. I think I had it written down here. They still got $40 million. So the Bears still have $40 million in cap space. They can still do damage with that. Help Caleb Williams out in year 2. I want to hear your thoughts on the Bears, but more so, how do you evaluate Caleb Williams, and where does he rank among this rookie quarterback draft class that we just saw this previous year in the NFL?
I love Caleb Williams. I think for as much as he is scrutinized, I think he just answers the bell every single time. There's this like rave going around right now with Jaden Daniels, rightfully so, had a great year, right? But if you look at the numbers, like, they're very similar to Caleb Williams. The issue is people just don't like Caleb Williams for whatever reason. Not going to get into it, but they don't like him as a person. Fine. I don't know him as a person. I just know what I see on Sundays, and he balls out in spite of a lot of things that are going wrong, because there's this obsession with franchises drafting a quarterback with no plan and just saying, fix my franchise. You can draft whoever you want at quarterback. If those 5 offensive linemen are not going to go and protect him, it's all for nothing. It is all for nothing. You can have all the receivers that you want. It's all for nothing. Another thing is that, yes, name-wise, they had weapons. DJ Moore, for a majority of the year, looked uninterested. He did not want to be in Chicago. Right. There was a lot of the times he's walking routes. I don't know what is going on there. Maybe with the addition of Ben Johnson, he'll be more interested. And Keenan Allen, when he was healthy, he played great. The issue was that he wasn't healthy a lot. And then you have Rome. I think Rome can potentially be a good receiver. I don't think he's like a number one. I think he'd be a great number two. But again, that was a lot of expectations placed on a rookie, right? And especially in a draft class with Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr., there was a lot of expectations placed on him, and he didn't live up to them. But I think this second year, I think will be a little bit of a resurgence for him. And then the running back, DeAndre Swift is probably the worst starting running back in the National Football League. It's his name value. That's literally it. He's not good at football. There's been countless times where I've watched a Chicago Bears game. There's a wide open hole, and he just goes the opposite way. He is running down the field. He cuts back in where defenders are. So yes, if you want to just look at them at face value, the Chicago Bears had talent last year. But if you add a little bit of context and just look at them a little bit deeper, it was really just names. I'm taking production over names, and I'm excited to see what Ben Johnson is going to do with Caleb Williams, because I think this is going to be a big year for not only him, but Chicago, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're in the playoffs. And then where he sits amongst this rookie class, and this is a great rookie class, you got him, you got Jane Daniels, Bo Nix, and Drake May. I firmly have Caleb Williams at 2. I think he's the second best quarterback in this draft class.
Behind Jaden Daniels?
Behind Drake May.
Wow. Really?
Yes.
And you have Jaden Daniels below them?
Yes. I think Jaden Daniels is a great quarterback. But again, when you allow a quarterback to have a legitimate wide receiver 1 in his rookie year, it helps out so much. And again, if DJ Moore wanted to play football in Chicago last year, would be a different story, right? He didn't. Drake May, I legitimately believe in my heart of hearts, New England scouts Walmart and dollar store employees for receiver. So I think when you look at Drake May and Caleb Williams and what they were able to go and do week in and week out, they were doing far more with far less. So that's why I'm going to take them over Jaden Daniels.
That's interesting. I'd go Daniels first. I mean, maybe it's a prisoner of the moment thing too. Like, we've only seen 1 year of Daniels, and that was the case with CJ Stroud this year as well. Like, I think a lot of people hyped him up, and then his sophomore season, besides the playoffs, was kind of lackluster, I think, for people's expectations at least. The thing with Jaden Daniels, yes, I think he had one of the best teams to come in as for a rookie this year. Definitely better than Caleb Williams. I think maybe equivalent to Bo Nix. Bo Nix was in a pretty good situation as well, but he was far ahead of a lot of the rookie quarterbacks that came in this year. But the one thing I appreciated about Jaden Daniels was his poise and his ability to come in seamlessly. Like, I didn't necessarily see a large setback from Jaden Daniels where he was unsettled as a quarterback. I thought that overall throughout the year and with the deep playoff run, I saw it all from Jaden Daniels. And maybe that will change, but in no world would I put Caleb Williams over him right now, or Drake May, just from what I have seen. I don't think I can do that, just going to bed at night and saying I would have them over him. If they do outperform him next year, I will take the slander. That's fine, but I would still take Jaden Daniels as the number 1 quarterback out of this rookie quarterback draft class, just based off what I had seen from him. But it's interesting the points that you make, Deshaun, about the Patriots, and that was kind of something we had lined up, was as a Patriots fan, and honestly, like, I've talked to you about it, the Patriots, yes, they've had some struggles since Brady left, and I know Bill brought them to the playoffs that year after with Mac Jones, but it hasn't been all that pretty afterwards. I do think that they have some hope moving forwards. I think the Patriots could arguably be a playoff team next year. Now, it all really depends what Mike Vrabel does for the team and how this team plays out. They have $118 million in cap space. That is insane. $118 million in cap space. They have their franchise quarterback. They have a very good defense that can put in work with the right coaching. We've seen that, Deshaun. Now the question is, can they solve the weapons problem on offense? They have Cooper Kupp available. There's Chris Godwin. There's T. Higgins. There's a lot of big-name receivers that can step in and can prove to be a number one immediately. We've seen Cooper Kupp as a number one. Chris Godwin, I'm sure, would be more than serviceable as a number one. And T. Higgins, he was the number one in 2020. He did not too bad, almost 1,000 yards. That is a lot better than anything that the Patriots have. So maybe it's not this year, but I like to think optimistically. And as a Buffalo fan, Deshaun, I'd still take Buffalo over them this year, but I think the days of having a division to ourselves are long gone, especially with Mike Vrabel entering the division, because I really do appreciate him as a coach.
Yeah. No, I think that we are so close, because since 2019, when Brady left us, we've always had a top-notch defense, and we were always right there. It was just we were just unable to go and put points on the board. Now we don't have a quarterback that is just in a system making reads. Like, now we have a quarterback that is the system. Like, he is making plays, he is creating plays, and I think if you want to win in the National Football League, you need a quarterback that at times is able to find success off script, right? And that's something that Drake May has showed a lot in his rookie season with so little around him. And yeah, like, when you are speaking about their like the amount of money that New England has, I would be severely disappointed if we don't spend a lot of it. Simply because we are not in a place right now to be in we'll hold out and wait. No, like, I think in New England, our standards are a lot different than a lot of the other franchises in the NFL. Like, when you win as many Super Bowls as like New England did in the last 20 years, it's hard to get a fan base to accept not making the playoffs for as many years as like we've had. So I think right now we just sound like the outside linebacker, Harold Landry. I think that'll be a huge addition. He's back with Mike Vrabel. Now we just need to get the offense going. And I think if we can get a player like Chris Godwin or Cooper Kupp, or
anyone.
Yes, like, it's really at a point where we have the worst wide receiver room in the NFL. Literally just give us anyone who can run a route and catch a ball at like a decent rate. That'll be an improvement. And I think we're going to get that at number 4. And I'm crossing my fingers. Hopefully we get Travis Hunter.
Yeah, you're looking for him. Hey, I know we talked about that.
Absolutely.
Would you see him as a Patriots fan? Do you want that defensively and offensively, or are you strictly keeping him offensively? What are your thoughts on that?
I think with a player like Travis Hunter, he's so dynamic. Like, he's able to like go and play offense and defense. I think with what we need right now, like with what New England needs, they need him to be that offensive playmaker. But because he is so dynamic, and the idea of placing him alongside Christian Gonzalez, I think is so appealing that you can't go and pass that up. So I think if the Patriots were to draft Travis Hunter, I think it'd be something where he plays 80% of snaps on offense, and there are 20% of them where he is kind of inserted in on defense.
Yeah, like I said, I have a lot of hope, I think, for the New England Patriots moving forward. I mean, I've watched the success that Brady had there and Bill Belichick, and obviously, like, over the last 2 decades, there might not be a sports team that's had the success that New England had. They were just flat out incredible dominance. I don't care if they didn't win a Super Bowl for 10 years. Like, they were consistently a threat through that period. And now it took them a little bit to get their feet underneath themselves after Brady left. Mac Jones, like, seemingly was the option maybe for a year, and then it kind of fell off and derailed. But with Drake May, I mean, Drake May had 2,200 yards and 15 touchdowns with nobody. I would challenge any mediocre NFL fan to name the weapons that Drake May had this year, maybe even just one of them. So it was to that extent that Drake May really had to pull the Patriots out of the ground, and he somewhat did, but obviously there was no contention for them because we can never expect a rookie quarterback to come in and fix it that quick. But I mean, I kind of commented on the Jerod Mayo situation to Shawn, and my kind of final thoughts on that were it was unfair, just from a moral perspective for me, what they did to Jerod Mayo, but I saw it coming, and when you're looking to advance your franchise, they have your franchise guy. Mike Vrabel is the guy you wanted on the market. Obviously they were going to go get him, right? They're not going to just stand on their morals with Jerod Mayo because they just want to root for him. If there's a guy that they want, that they know can produce, that has made the playoffs, that has won a Coach of the Year award, they're going to go out and grab that, right? So I think Vrabel, in that sense, it made sense for them to go out after him. He has the franchise ties as well, played there back in his day. So that's something exciting for me. If there's anything else you wanted to add on there, Deshaun.
No, I think we are so close. I'm going to go and throw it out there. I think we are going to play in the wild card this year. I think we have everything on defense. We just need one or two pieces on offense because I think Ramondre Stevenson is still a serviceable running back.
Yeah.
If we can add one or two offensive linemen, whether that be through the draft or free agency, I think we are right there.
Yeah, I had talked about it too. I think they're right there as well. AFC's tough though, and one of the major things is the quarterback play in the AFC is just off the charts, Deshaun. One of the last things we had in line for tonight was overcoming the hump for franchise quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes has owned the AFC for the last 8 seasons. He's been in the Super Bowl 5 or 6 times now. Allen, Jackson, Burrow, we kind of went over this.
Can we say that again? I think people have to understand what you had just said. 5 straight AFC championships, right?
8 straight AFC championships.
8, yes.
Those are the Super Bowls we're talking about.
Yes. So 8 straight. These are video game numbers. So for anyone to even think of the idea of having anyone above him is ridiculous. Right now, we and anyone in sports media should be having a conversation about who's number 2. Number 1 is 15. I'm not even going to say his name because everyone knows who I'm talking about when I say 15. It's 15. Then it's who's next.
No, I didn't think this was a discussion either, to be frank with you. I didn't think, apparently it is, right? Because recency bias and the MVPs, they're very exciting, but there were years where Brady was outplayed. There were years where Matt Ryan won the MVP, where Cam Newton won the MVP. Nobody at that time was saying I would take any other quarterback over Brady.
And here's my one thing for that. This is what silences it all. If the Kansas City Chiefs were to get on the phone and say, we will do a straight up trade with either Cincinnati, the Ravens, or Buffalo, QB for QB, none of those teams are saying no. None of those teams are saying no. Patrick Mahomes has separated himself in the biggest of moments, time and time again, against all 3 of these quarterbacks. Because there's this thing of everyone is better than Patrick Mahomes until it's time to be better than Patrick Mahomes. Josh Allen has tried and tried again. I'm sorry to all Bills fans.
You're all good.
But you're not getting over that hump.
He's 17-4 in the playoffs, by the way.
And
I know wins aren't, I don't consider them as a quarterback stat because I just completely hate it. But they carry some weight.
Yeah.
Super Bowls, winning, playoff wins, they carry some weight. It's not the be-all, end-all. And I'm not going to move the goalposts here for this guy, but listen, 3 Super Bowls, 8 straight conference championships. To say that doesn't mean anything and throw it out the window and Josh Allen and Lamar have played better, it's like, how could you be so disloyal to someone that has produced and is absolutely the next guy up, is the next face of the league? Nobody has told me Josh Allen's the face of the league, except Bills fans, and they're like, understandable, right? It's the same thing with Lamar. It's
because sports fans get so bored with having somebody on top for so long. We have seen it with LeBron James. It's always, okay, who's the next guy to be a better basketball player than LeBron James? They just keep on looking for it. It's not going to happen. And it's the same thing that's happening with Patrick Mahomes. Who is the next quarterback? Like, because we are so sick of seeing him. But you cannot deny the numbers. He just played in his 3rd straight Super Bowl. I don't think people understand how hard that is to do in the NFL. Like, yes, he only won 2, right? But listen to what I'm saying. Like, he only won 2. Like out of those 3 years, he won 2. Like, he is doing things that I am afraid a large amount of fans now will not be able to appreciate until he's gone. And it's going to be the same thing with Tom Brady, because I see it now. Everyone's saying, oh, I loved the Patriots and Tom Brady. They won and did it the right way. I'm a Patriots fan. I've been a Patriots fan. When Tom Brady was in the league on the Patriots, nobody liked us. Check on social media. Everyone hated us. They said all these things, but now that he's retired, now they're able to remove the hate, and then they're able to see greatness. And now they're just making the same mistake again with Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane. And like, the whole idea of overcoming the hump for Allen, Jackson, and Burrow, like, the reality is, Shawn, there are limited years where Burrow, Jackson, and Allen will get shots at a Super Bowl because Mahomes and the Chiefs are in the AFC. And that's just the reality of it, right? Burrow already got his shot. So is it possible that he returns? Definitely. Like, I'm not counting that out. He's
absolutely
very young. Like, his career has 10 more years of elite performance until we can definitively say no more Super Bowl for Burrow. But there are limited time slots for quarterbacks to win in the NFL. And 10 to 15 years seems like a lot, but when you have a dynasty in front of you and a team that just won't go away in the playoffs and is usually playing at home in the playoffs in a hostile environment, it's tough. So to get over the hump for Allen, Jackson, and Burrow, if there's a time where the Chiefs would seemingly be beat up, it would be right now. Like, they've had so much dominance, and after their 3rd trip to the Super Bowl, you'd think the team is kind of beat up right now. Travis Kelce's getting a little older. I think right now maybe it's the time Allen or Lamar squeaks through and gets their shot, but people got to realize there's limited shots, and the window's going to be really small for both Allen, Lamar, and if Burrow even makes it. And that's completely discounting everything else we've talked about. C.J. Stroud, Justin Herbert. Any other elite quarterback in that conference is a complete write-off for me, because even the 3 behind Mahomes can't get the job done. So, I mean, if that's not a big enough discussion to have about Mahomes being at number 1 and all these other guys just trying to overcome that, I don't know what is.
Absolutely.
The last thing we kind of had here, Deshaun, and I'm going to dish them your way. We had Would You Rather Brock Purdy edition. Brock Purdy's lined up for contract extension coming soon, is what I'm expecting. I think a lot of people are. And the Niners are kind of tied up right now. We're waiting to see how much they're going to pay him. Is it going to be in the 40 range? Is it going to be 50? Man, Dak Prescott's making 60, so the sky's the limit, I think, for quarterbacks right now. I'm going to throw some names your way and just an answer on which quarterback you would rather have. Brock Purdy or Jalen Hurts?
Brock Purdy.
Brock Purdy or Tua?
Brock Purdy.
All right, I'd take Purdy. Purdy or Trevor Lawrence?
Brock Purdy.
I'd take Purdy as well. Purdy or Dak Prescott?
Dak Prescott.
I'm rolling Brock. So you would take Dak over Jalen then?
Yes.
Brock Purdy or Geno Smith?
Brock Purdy.
I'd take Brock Purdy. Purdy or Kyler Murray?
This is probably the closest one, but I'll probably lean Brock Purdy.
I'd take Brock Purdy. Purdy or Baker?
Baker.
I thought Baker as well. I lent Baker on this one. I think he's super talented. He's making a name for himself. Brock Purdy or Justin Herbert?
Justin Herbert.
I'd take Herbert as well.
Yes.
Brock Purdy or Jordan Love?
Brock Purdy.
I'd take Purdy there as well. It's tough. Love's had a lot of issues in the playoffs, and, I mean, Purdy just hasn't, right? I just want to circle back real quick before we wrap things up. Your first answer, Purdy or Jalen Hurts. We need an explanation here before we go.
So, you and I had this same conversation last week off camera. Brock Purdy and Jalen Hurts are the exact same. They are the same thing. Everything that you want to go and crucify Brock Purdy for, Jalen Hurts is that. Okay? Don't get me wrong. Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback, won a Super Bowl, great year. Jalen Hurts had Davante Smith, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, and Saquon Barkley with the best offensive line in pro football. I genuinely think there were about 9 quarterbacks that would have been able to win with Philadelphia this year. You have a record-setting running back. You have 2 wide receiver ones on your offense. You have a top 7 tight end. Like, again, the best offensive line. There is not a lot that Jalen Hurts has to do. Jalen Hurts just has to not lose games in Philadelphia. He doesn't have to go out there and win games. And if he does, it's 1 or 2 games a season. That is far less pressure. Now, again, you could say the same thing for Brock Purdy. But we're now seeing what Brock Purdy looks like without a lot of those weapons. And honestly, I'm impressed. I don't think that we would be saying the same thing with Jalen Hurts.
Well, just to talk about Purdy real quick before we wrap things up. Purdy had nothing this year. No defense. The defense was pretty bad until the back half of the season when it was okay. The O-line was brutal. Ayuk was gone. Debo was
fat
trash. No Christian McCaffrey. Jordan Mason went out. Garendo went out. And on top of that, I'm not a huge Kyle Shanahan fan. So when people talk down on Purdy, it kind of confuses me. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me because he had nothing this year. Really, he had nothing. And he still carved out 6 wins for them, had some big performances. Now, is he going to be the game-changing quarterback that Josh Allen, Lamar is? No, for sure not. But that's not his forte. And I think Jalen Hurts excels when you put him in an offense that is ready to succeed. And he is an elite game manager. And he does it at a very good level. And he did that this year. That's what I was talking about early on, Shawn, is quarterbacks, they adapt to their environments. And Jalen Hurts this year knew his role would be step in and just manage the offense how it's meant to be managed. And they needed a big game out of him in the Super Bowl, and they got it, for sure. And as a viewer for me...
And here's the thing about that big game, okay? And I'm really not trying to sound like a hater. Saquon, that was Saquon's game, okay? Now, Saquon did not have a lot of yards, but his impact was all over that game. Saquon, his presence forced the Kansas City Chiefs to load the box and play one-on-one on the outside. Like I said, there's about 9 quarterbacks that would be able to hit A.J. Brown or Davante Smith when they are being guarded one-on-one. That's all I'm saying.
No, listen, Jalen Hurts, and I think we have him a little ranked differently, Shawn. Like, I have him at 5 just because I've seen what he can do, and I believe the potential is there because I've seen him have big seasons. But I am also very firm on the fact that I would never, right now, entertain a discussion with him over Burrow, Allen, Lamar, or Mahomes. Like, for
Not
me,
even
it's
close.
not even close.
Not even close.
And it is shocking to me that even me, in my case, I think I have him, I feel like I have him high. It is shocking to me that people still give backlash because of a Super Bowl run that Jalen Hurts played really good in the Super Bowl and had a pretty good conference championship game against a depleted Washington team that just wasn't ready for the moment. So I understand why the Jalen Hurts hype is there, and I'm all for it, and I supported him. A lot of people were disrespecting him going into the playoffs, and he totally showed us what's up. That's why I got him at 5. But at the same time, it is crazy to me that people think he is the successor of Mahomes now. It's crazy to me. It doesn't make any sense to me.
And you're right.
I've never understood that, right? Like, I can respect you if you have him from 10 to 5. Yes. That is cool, whatever.
Yes.
I don't know why it's such a problem, though, that I would take a proven franchise guy that has skills beyond what we had seen coming into the league over Jalen Hurts. Like, really.
You were completely right. Like, we are so far off on where, like, we have him, because I think having Jalen Hurts at top 5 is like a travesty. I think that, yeah, like, he's closer to like 8, 9, or 10. For me,
that's completely rational when you take into account what other people are thinking. And
like, for
I'm
me,
all for it. Like,
you can't use game manager and top 5 in the same sentence. That just, like, it does not make sense to me. Because when things are not going right, when maybe you don't have the right weapons around you, are you able to still go out there and win important games? Jalen Hurts cannot. And I am not going to go and place him, exactly like you said, over guys that I know can. Like, I am not a Josh Allen fan at all. Honestly, I probably err on the side of being a Josh Allen hater. But what he was able to do this year with the lack of weapons, that's commendable. Jalen Hurts is not doing that. Jalen Hurts is not doing that at all.
This is the last thing I'll say to Shawn before we wrap things up. There have been 2 years where Jalen Hurts has had incredible teams. Both years he took them to the Super Bowl. So that deserves some praise for me. Because I praise Brock Purdy. However, there have been 2 years where Jalen Hurts has been missing pieces on that team.
And then
last year and 2021. In both seasons, he got smacked in the playoffs by the Bucs in round 1 in the wild card game. So when you're talking about dragging a team to the playoffs, I don't see it happening, right? And I don't. My final concluding point is I would never hold it against a player for performing with what's around him. Because if I say, Jalen Hurts isn't top 5 because he has a great team, then he'll never be top 5. Because how can he ever escape the argument that he has a great team, right? Like, if he has a great team for his entire career, then what am I supposed to say? Like, he can't break top 5 because he has a great team. Well, that's out of his control. That's just Philly being a winning team. Absolutely. But I truly believe there is a clearly defined top 4. And then after that, we can have a discussion.
Yeah. And like, the last thing I'll say is that, yes, like, I will never fault a player for having success around them. Like, that's what you should do as an organization is place as many weapons around your quarterback as you can. Absolutely. But when we start ranking players individually, I need to know how good you are without those. And with the 4 guys that we have ranked ahead of him, like, without a shadow of a doubt, I've seen them do that. And I don't think, anytime that, like, we've had to see Jalen Hurts do that, he just hasn't.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Deshaun. Thank you so much for episode
Absolutely.
1. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Deshaun, let's keep this going, bro. I appreciate it.